Hello, dear friends. Hello, fellow editors. Welcome back to another masterclass with me, Paddy Bird, the founder of Inside the Edit. We are the world's leading creative editing course. This is brought to you with our dear friends over at Adobe. So we got another three-parter for this particular session, and we got a really fantastic session today. So what are we going to be talking about? What is the subject? So there's a whole bunch of really essential, fundamental skills that we need as editors. The list is pretty long, but what we're going to focus on today is one of the core fundamental ones of them all. It's called Shotflow. And we're going to look and examine some of the features that are in Shotflow that we need to be concerned about. So essentially, what is Shotflow? Let's just break it down before we start looking at some things. First of all, Shotflow is how the shots are cutting together. Now, this could be determined by a lot of different things: tonality, speed, tension, drama, whatever is going on in our sequence or scene at the time. But there are some fundamental laws which we're going to look at in Shotflow, and it's essentially, we're going to look at 2 or 3 or 4 of them over the next 3 masterclasses, and we're going to piece them together and see how they relate as a whole, when they're combined. But Shotflow is how we actually cut the shots together, which is a really important part of the art form. If we can't cut these shots together in a nice, fluid, sequential way that is pleasing to the eye, then the audience is just going to turn off. So it's a massive part of what we do in the very early stages, and something we keep an eye on throughout the whole course of our edit, even if it's a 2-minute sequence or a 2-hour feature film. So let's just have a look at the fundamental core aspects to Shotflow. Now, Shotflow comprises a number of different things, like continuity, like fluidity of cutting and motion and action and camera movement around the cuts. So are these cut together in a way that is pleasing to the eye? So we've got continuity, we've got camera movement, we've got frame size changes, we've got action that happens within the frame. And of course, we're telling a story over a course of pictures. That's what editing is. We're telling one arc, whether it's a pictorial arc, a narrative arc, a dialogue-based arc. They're all kind of combined to produce this one arc that we are telling through a series of images, moving images to cut together. So how do we cut them? How do we cut them together to make it pleasing to the eye, to make it logical? We've got really keep our eye on visual grammar as we cut. You can really see people who aren't trained in editing through the visual grammar of how they cut shots together. So we're going to look at some concepts today. We're going to watch a sequence or 2 now, and we're going to look at some very basic, simplistic explanations of, when we watch a sequence through on the timeline, of what we're looking for. Yeah. But those are the main headlines that we're going to be looking on this masterclass through these 3 parts. So let's look at a sequence here. We'll just play the sequence. It's one that we've looked at before in these Adobe masterclasses. It's just set in Venice, Italy, and it's our narrator Tony, the Californian photographer, and he's just having a walk around Venice and at dawn and describing what he's seeing and feeling and why he likes to do this. So let's just have a quick look at this. It's only about 40 seconds.
Each city does have its own character. Venice has that personality of just being really old and very serene and very beautiful because of the type of city it is. It's a waterway city. I'd never had an idea of what the cities were and what their personalities were until I walked the streets for a few weeks, you know, and kind of discovered for myself. Uh, 6:30 a.m. in Venice.
Okay, so let's leave it there. Now, what's particularly fascinating about this is that it's a very sort of primitive cut in terms of shot flow. It's quite simplistic. It's very kind of slow and cerebral. So let's look at it in terms of analysis, in terms of shot flow and particularly shot size. So there's a number of different things that are going on in any one shot. There could be movement, but we're either photographing a person, place, or a thing. It might be moving, it might be static. But over the course of these here, we are telling a story. So it might be sequential in nature, i.e. there's a chain of action in between each one that connects them all together. And we're going to see an example of this a bit later on. Or there might be kind of isolated individual shots that are kind of more cerebral, cut together, you know, kind of like that. So there's sort of connections, but, you know, he's obviously on a journey here walking around, and we're illustrating some of these shots of Venice at dawn. But what I wanted to concentrate on first is, look, let's look at the shot sizes. Now, unfortunately, there's no iron laws in editing. You know, you can always break the laws for a number of different reasons, stylization, tonality, and all that kind of stuff. But let's start off with a good rule of thumb. Usually, we're going to be changing over cuts. We're going to change shot sizes as we go over. So we've got either shot sizes and angles so that we give the audience something different every single time. The audience loves variation, and through the sequential nature of a sequence, we can go from wides to mids to close-ups to movement to wides again. You know, a lot of this stuff is quite wide, and obviously what's changing is the distance of the character from the camera. So that's the first thing. Audiences love going through different shot sizes. Now, of course, we can change this and go close, 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 wide, wide, wide. But this is the norm, and we want to just create this as a norm and then break from the norm once we've learnt all the kind of rules around stylization and genre and stuff like that. But essentially, let's look at another sequence as well now. So you can see across this sequence here, we're going from sort of wide to mids to wide to mids. It's a lot of it's wide, but there's a lot of different angles. So that's something to be aware of there. Actually, just before we move on to that, let's just take another thing that we're going to do here. Another thing we're very deeply concerned about with shot flow is the essential action that's going on in the shot, but most importantly, and especially at the start of the shot and at the end of the shot, because that's when it transitions to the next shot. So what's happening in terms of action in the shot, and where does it start and where does it end? Because how we cut that movement or action or whatever's going on inside the shot at the start and the end, how we cut that in the next shot has a massive jarring effect to the audience. So we've got to be very careful what we're doing around the cutting point. So obviously what goes on inside a shot is very, very interesting in terms of the action, but also we have to be very careful about what that essential action is doing, i.e. is it finished or is it linked to the next shot once we go in and out? So let's just look at this. Let's just see this sequence again through that eyes. So we've got a moving boat, and it's kind of moving in two shots. So there's a connection there, which is really, really nice. There's a high angle shot going from a low angle shot, and that's a fluid shot flow. That's great. Then we're going on the character. We introduce the character coming in. He's walking towards the camera, which is a nice bit of visual grammar. If you're coming towards something, that's like, oh, I'm opening up something, which is kind of nice, but it's a wide shot. And then we've got this foreground action of this road sweeper who's street cleaner. He's coming across this way. So we've got a kind of nice symmetry to the shot. We've got movement coming across this way, and we've got movement coming across this way, horizontal and vertical movement. So that's very pleasing to the eye. And I cut in at exactly the point where that was happening. I didn't cut in when the guy was here or here or here. I cut in so it acts as a kind of wipe. So there's a logic into that visual grammar.
This has that personality of just being really old and very...
And again, we've got a connection here because this is obviously the reverse angle shot. Tony, the character, is moving up the stairs. And there's a connection from there to there. So we've got a kind of sequential nature to it. We're going from wide to wide, but they're two very, very different wides in terms of composition and stuff like that, which is really, really nice.
Serene and very beautiful.
And of course, we've got, again, this guy coming in left to right. So there's a connection in the symmetry between the two shots, which is really interesting.
Because of the type of city it is.
And then we got another moving shot.
It's a water.
Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at the shot flow here. So we've got we've got a difference here between the movement of an object in the shot, and now we've got our first real bit of camera movement. Now, where did I come into the camera movement? Let's just go back frame by frame and look at the shots, the frames in between there. So obviously the static camera, moving object. Now we've got moving object and moving camera. So I came in, I didn't come in halfway through the camera move or while the camera move was just starting. I came in when the camera move was static, and then we're moving over, and then I waited, and as soon as it settled, bang, I'm out again. So that is a nice piece of fluid shot flow. Of course, we can mess around with that. Then we get into kind of pace and timing, but this is a really good bar to set us at. The essential action or camera movement has been allowed to, when we cut, it's been allowed to start from zero, and there's a movement, camera and action stops, and then we cut out. So there's a kind of fluid, there's a cleanness to the shot flow, which is really, really nice. And again, another piece of movement there from
I've never had an idea
there, and these are all kind of like wider. They're more cinematic shots that I've chosen here. So the object, with differences, we're looking at the object here. So there's another wide shot. We're looking at the lighting, the reflection, and stuff like that. The object is closer here than it is in the next shot, but it's similar. It's sort of similar.
I've never had an idea of what the cities were and what their personalities were until I walked the streets.
And there's a continuity there between he's walking towards the camera there, and then we're jumping to the camera here. And then he's walking away. But you can see that what you can see with all of these is that there's a very simplistic nature to the way we're cutting in between these different shots, different action, and any action that's happening or camera movement is being allowed to settle or stop afterwards. We just have only got really one shot for the camera work in this one. So this is a very simplistic nature to shot flow. Everything looks clean. We're cutting largely between different angles and shot sizes, but it's very, very simple, and it looks fluid and nice. Any of the action that goes across the cuts looks fluid, like we've got multiple cameras going on and capturing the similar thing. So this is a first step into understanding shot flow. It obviously gets way more complex than that, and we're going to look at that in the next part 2 of this masterclass with Adobe on shot flow. But essentially, let's look at those things that we've been talking about. How are these shots cut together? Continuity, because we've had boat movement and stuff like that in a very simplistic kind of way between and before and after the cut. Shot size changes, wide to medium to close up to medium and stuff like that. Audiences love variation, and they love going in between. You can mess around with that. That's for a different masterclass. And then, of course, the essential action that's going on inside the shot, but what's happening around the cut point. So are we cutting to a shot and then that action is allowed to start? Or in terms of like we saw the example of the camera movement, we cut to the shot with the camera movement, the camera was static, then we allowed it to go. And all of those things are linked into kind of tonality and pacing and stuff like that, which we can talk about on another masterclass. But all of these shots look fluid. all of these shots look like we've got visual grammar going across the cut, and they produce a feeling within the audience that is nice. It looks like we know what we're doing. It looks like there's a sequential nature to the story we're telling, and we haven't made any mistakes. There's no kind of wobbly camera work at the end of a shot, or repositioning, or a focus in the middle of the shot. There's nothing that's aesthetically unpleasing. It looks very simple, and it's woven together with Shotflow very simplistically. So those are the kind of fundamental things that we can look at, an editor looks at when they're cutting stuff together. We'll look in part 2 at a bit more of a complicated, more observational bit of shot flow in a scene. So I hope you're going to come and join me for that one. It is a little bit more complicated, but there's a logic to it, which is really, really interesting. And the outcome for all of this is that we want our sequences, our scenes, to have a really beautiful shot flow, a really good understanding of the shot size changes, the action that's going on across the cuts, the fluidity of the action, the continuity, and they all add up into this one nice big ball of loveliness, really, which is called good shot flow. So please come and join me for part 2 very soon.